All right. Thank you guys for coming to my little PLC. The problem we had in the classroom is we have a noisy group of first graders, and we are trying to find ways to manage that noise level. And we went through a couple of different interventions and gathered some data, and we'll go through those things today. Very quickly in our PowerPoint, we have an agenda that I'll go over real briefly, a vision statement. I'll talk again about the problem in the classroom, the strategies that I intervened with, a little background context, implementation of those strategies, some data that I collected, the summary of what happened and what worked, what didn't. My vision statement is one of a personal nature. My vision is to be a strong, nurturing father to my two sons with autism, to model being a good person to them, and to use those same skills to form strong relationships with my students. I think what I have learned as a father of students, of children with a few challenges, has taught me to apply those things in the classroom. That's what I want to do as a teacher. I want to build those same relationships of compassion, understanding, which would lead to growth. Background context, you guys know, I've got a combined class, 9 kinders, 17 first graders. The kindergartners do respond to the old traditional ways of here's the expectations, consequences if we don't meet those expectations. But the first graders are not responding to those traditional things, so that's why I chose to find some interventions. Obviously, the effect is that it does take away productive learning time when they're talking during centers or even during independent work. So we first tried some online noise meters per Ms. Reynolds' suggestion. First we tried the class dojo, which we do use the dojo anyway as a behavior management tool, which is generally effective. But the noise meter is really just an equalizer. It goes up and down, and it's purely visual. There's no audio. So, and it also is a bit delayed. So if the kids got noisy, it would register 5 seconds later. And if the students were looking at the board, it would be effective. But when they're working, they shouldn't be looking at the board. They should be working, right? So we tried another one called Bouncy Balls. And I have the website, or the address here. And it gives a few choices. It's more visual, it's more appealing, and balls sort of bounce, I guess the word would be phonetically. The louder it gets, the crazier they get. What I enjoyed about this is that it did have some word prompts to tell the kids when they're being too loud, like shh, quiet please, and you're too loud, or it's too noisy, I forget exactly.
Did you feel like it was more effective? Accurate
again, I felt there was still a
dojo?
delay, and I toyed with the sensitivity. You can go up and down, but you have some familiarity with the dojo one. It's running off of the computer microphone, so yeah, if you're there on even middle sensitivity, you sneeze and it goes crazy. So maybe because of that space, there was a bit of a delay. But what I found the problem to be, again, was there were no audio cues, only visual cues. So it would say shh, and they didn't even know that.
Them to be looking.
Right, exactly. They needed to be looking at it. Now, I did offer the class which did they prefer, let them have some investment, and they chose the bouncy balls. And it is, again, visually, it's really cool, but it didn't really seem to do the job. So I finally looked at, and this was my whole plan, was these are 2 different interventions that I was going to try, all different, same intervention really, just 2 different technologies. And I discovered they didn't work effectively. So I went back, did a little bit of reading, and decided to try what I'm referring to as cooperative structures or independent table work structures. You guys know the background. I'm not going to go through that with you because I kind of already did. And I went through all of this stuff as well. So I introduced tabletop jobs, and an example of those jobs, I'll go back one. Task manager, make sure everyone in the group stays on task, participates, stays on task. Noise manager, which is probably the most important for this particular experiment, if you will. Make sure the noise level is appropriate. Timekeeper we don't really use because the kids are still not really fully aware of how a clock works. Materials manager is certainly relevant. Their job is to take care of the materials. Recorder we don't typically use because we're not doing those types of cooperative structures. And a reader we occasionally use, but not very often. But I have more specifically the noise manager, materials manager, team leader, whose job it is to obviously lead the team, encourage everybody to stay on task. Speaker of the group is the person who's in charge of, if there are problems that they cannot resolve, then it's that person's duty to come and speak to the teacher. And so what I did was I assigned these roles to the same people for that week within their groups. It will change each week. But I chose first to put the loudest person as the noise manager because I think that helps that person to be more conscious. So what I discovered immediately, right off the bat, was it worked. Because they were holding each other accountable, as well as that feeling of investment in the whole situation, for each of them. I took some data from Dojo, and this is the whole month of August. We had 71% positive behaviors, but we had a great big section here of talking out. And then after I introduced the tabletop structures, we improved to a 91% positivity, and you see our talking out and off task talking out specifically was much, much smaller. So my determination was that it worked. And my hypothesis to begin with was if the students have a personal investment into how this class operates, then I believe this will affect the success that we want.
They see themselves part of the big picture.
Exactly. And based on the data that I collected and just personal anecdotal observations, it is an effective strategy. And the kids continue they're getting more work done, they're staying on task. We're using those strategies obviously of ask three then me, only at a whisper level. And today especially, it was nice.
Absolutely.
It was a quiet work reading time. And that's when we have the biggest problems, is core reading, because I can't attend to all the students because I have two classes basically, as you guys know. So
functioning simultaneously.
So with all that said, I like it. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to refine it, make it more visually appealing, maybe color code the groups. And I think the kids seem very interested in the fact that they get to change on this job this week, but what will I get next week? And so I'm happy with it. I'm going to stick with it. So, thank you for coming.
Thank you for sharing that with us. We're excited to try it out too.